Maharaj. I feel odd to be the one up here. I don't feel that I have any unique qualification. Just I've been around for a while. I guess that's my qualification. But I think everything begins in the beginning. We're each born on a certain day. Our life starts. We begin to be aware of the world and begin to experience things when our life starts. Of course, we're eternal, we know that. Hare Krishna land also began at a certain time. And there are those who were here in the very beginning. I was not one of those people. I've been here for a long time, but I wasn't here that early. Actually, in 1975, I was in Vrindavan, and I was head pujari in Vrindavan when the temple opened. So my experience is more in Vrindavan, and then I came to Bombay in 1977. So all those intimate pastimes of Srila Prabhupada, arranging to get the land, it's been very documented in a number of books by the devotees. It's an amazing story. But in those days, 95% of the devotees were from the West, maybe more. It was hard to find an Indian devotee. There was a few from the beginning, but generally it was mostly Westerners. In India, people that were not used to this culture, were not used to the heat, were not used to the mosquitoes, were not used to the water, and it was great austerity on their part to try to develop this land. And of course, even starting in America, you see how many devotees are in this room. So when Srila Prabhupada started ISKCON in America, there were not even this many people. It was really just a handful of hippies, basically unqualified people that became attracted somehow and wanted to help the Swami. Somebody brought a carpet, somebody brought a painting, and they tried to help him in various ways. And as the movement developed, of course, people's awareness, understanding, surrender, everything changed, everything developed. In the early days, as I mentioned this morning, Srila Prabhupada even waited in line to use the bathroom because people didn't know. People weren't, they weren't that aware. So slowly over time, things change, things develop, things improve. And now we have an international society with thousands and thousands of devotees. And Krishna Consciousness in ISKCON has developed so much. This building is now, like, some new devotees come and this building is already here. They don't have to sleep on the terrace and be bitten by mosquitoes and, really suffer. It's like every facility is provided for us. Fans and space and beautiful flowers, and many people to associate with who are interested to try to please Srila Prabhupada. Because really that was our only qualification, I think, is somehow we really fell in love with Srila Prabhupada. And we wanted to do anything to please him, to bring a smile to his face, to help him in some way, whether it was a small way or a big way, according to people's capacity. So, I mean, everything we see here, I mean, who designed and who oversaw the construction of this beautiful quarters for Srila Prabhupada? Surabhi Swami and his crew, who just, their meditation was how to do something worthy. Although Srila Prabhupada is very happy to live in Radha Damodar temple with, completely simple standard. But the devotee's heart is thinking, I want to offer something nice to my teacher, my guru, my beloved. Because Srila Prabhupada, I mean, what an amazing personality. I mean, at the age of 70, deciding, I'm going to America with $5, with 40 rupees in his pocket, which was basically $5. And there's a lot of young, healthy, strong people in this room. And I said, here's $5, go to a country you don't know. I mean, it's not a simple thing. So, Hare Krishna land has developed so much. ISKCON in India has developed so much. I mean, now we have all homegrown devotees. Now you see, hardly you can find a Westerner. There's a handful of Westerners. It's all local people, which is as it should be. But Srila Prabhupada was frustrated in the beginning because he was always preaching. Even when he was a businessman, when he was married, he was writing and preaching, and it's not that at a certain point all of a sudden he did something else. That was always a part of him. And, many people were interested, but not to give their son, that you train my son. No, we like to hear the Shastra, but at the same time I want my son to be a doctor or a lawyer. So Srila Prabhupada was a little bit frustrated in his preaching that he couldn't sink his teeth into something as deeply as he wanted to. So he became inspired to go to America. And he thought America is the leading country of the world, and then if you can convince people in the greatest country of the world to follow Krishna, then the whole world will fall into line because people follow America. And we can see what is the result. And I mean, as I was also speaking this morning, there's no logical reason why he should have been successful, because he had no money, no help, I mean, nothing. And his message was quite a strict message. It was quite a bit different from what was popular at the time and what's basically always popular in the material world. So the other swamis that went to the West, they would always find rich people and they would be the benefactor and they would live in luxury and give some speeches now and then. So Allen Ginsberg, who is a beat poet from the 50s and 60s and an important part of the culture in America, the underground culture, when he met Srila Prabhupada, because they were both living on the Lower East Side of New York, which was like where the drunks lived because the rents are cheap, and they were both living there, and then he met Srila Prabhupada and he was very impressed by Prabhupada because he had a lot of street greed, because he wasn't uptown with the rich people. He was living amongst ordinary folks, simple people. And Allen Ginsberg, when he would read his poetry, he would always chant Hare Krishna in the beginning because Srila Prabhupada asked him to. And that's where I first heard Hare Krishna, was from Allen Ginsberg. So, how things begin, life begins at birth, spiritual life begins at sound vibration and association. And sincerity. I mean, it's part of the equation. So these Western devotees who somehow were attracted in different parts of America to help the Swami eventually came to India. And when Srila Prabhupada arrived in Bombay and went to Surat and other towns, I mean, there's a lot of very pious people who were very impressed. So to bring people from the West who were more absorbed in Indian culture than most Indians, the spiritual, the depth of the real treasure of this country is the spirituality. I've had rickshawalas in Bombay talk to me, quote to me in Sanskrit, and I mean, it's amazing, it's unique. India's, indescribable place. And Srila Prabhupada always said that Westerners, they're far away from Krishna, but due to the frustration with material life, they're looking towards Krishna. And Indians are very near Krishna, but turning away from Krishna, looking for technology, for advancement and profit and business and things like this. So it is a great victory for Srila Prabhupada to see in this room, in these temples, and in ISKCON in general in India, the Hare Krishna explosion is like hugely successful in India. So, I mean, that's fabulous. So, when I was in Vrindavan, 1975, when I actually was the head pujari in Paris, and I came to India for 1 month for the Gaur Purnima festival. It was the second Gaur Purnima festival. And I had been to Mayapur, and then I had arrived in Vrindavan. And it was to be about 2 weeks in Vrindavan, and then I was going back to Paris. So that is when the Krishna Balaram temple was opening. They were installing more deities than it existed in all of ISKCON, and one altar. So you have to put everything in perspective, what Srila Prabhupada did. I mean, so there were 5 or 6 devotees living in Vrindavan who were supervising the construction and making all the arrangements to be ready to open the temple. But once the temple is open and there's that many deities, it requires a huge manpower. And 5 or 6 people are not enough manpower to keep everything going. So Srila Prabhupada said that each zone had to give a certain number of people to kind of populate the temple. And I was the head pujari of Paris, and there were not that many men involved in deity worship in those days. It was mostly ladies. And even in Bombay in those days, it was the ladies that did artik and kind of took care of the deities most of the time. In the West, it was mostly ladies. So actually, they asked my friend, would you stay in Vrindavan and be head pujari? And he politely declined. They asked me, and I felt in my heart that there was so much to be learned in India, because I like to do things in a very traditional way. I was a cook, and I learned to cook from an expert Indian cook. And I was not one of those cooks that made pizza for Krishna because I like pizza. I made very traditional things. I figured, okay, if you can read in Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna ate rasgulla and gulab jamun and this sabji and that sabji, if I can learn how to make these things, then I know he'll be happy. And if I make pizza, maybe he'll like it. They say Radharani never made the same thing twice, so maybe she made pizza for Krishna sometimes. I don't know. But I know what's in Bhagavatam. So I was the kind of person that felt I want to do things in the traditional way. So I thought in India there's so much to be learned about deity worship. When I was in Paris and I heard there's shops in India just for deities and deity worship and paraphernalia, I was amazed. So in the end I stayed. I was not expecting to, but I stayed. So, I mean, this is an amazing culture. So I was agreed to stay and be head pujari, and basically I think it was the second night, for Sundar Artik, big festival. All Prabhupada's God brothers are coming, and so many, the public of Vrindavan, and it's time for the Artik. And there's no ghee in the ghee lamps. So on the altar, they have in Vrindavan, they had big ghee lamps that were always lit before the puja. And they had enough to start with, but then it was nobody's job to go shopping. Because, there was no system, there was no crew. It was just a handful of people who got a few things together. So all of a sudden, there was a hiccup. So in the middle of, when we saw what was going on, we sent somebody to Loy Bazaar to get some ghee. And then Bhavananda went on the altar in the middle of the Artik and put the ghee in the lamp. So I had the privilege of Srila Prabhupada calling me a malecha. So that they're malecha, they cannot do this. It was always a pleasure to do Deity worship in India, because Deity worship in India was kind of like Sankirtan in the West. So there would be, an Artik, and there would be just, the temple room would be full of devotees, of pilgrims, whether it was Vrindavan or, there was a lot of interaction with the people, with the public. It wasn't like often in the West, somebody's doing Artik in the middle of the day, and nobody's there, and they play a tape, and one person is doing Artik. Well, in India, there's, constant flow of people coming and going, especially when the temple got a little established. When this temple got established, when we moved the deities from the shack to the big temple, we just celebrated the 40th anniversary in January. So the first thing I did is we made big money boxes covered with silver. So people could put donations in the boxes. And of course, in those days, there was 1 paisa coins, 2 paisa coins, 5 paisa coins, 10 paisa coins. And we would open the boxes, and then you'd be lucky if you collected 10,000 rupees in 1 month. Often we didn't. And there was just so many of those coins, little nothing coins. And nowadays, when we think the funds that are flowing through Hare Krishna land, it's incredible that that this temple has been accepted in Bombay as the premier Krishna temple. And in the early days, it was like they say in Vrindavan, Angrezi Mandir, that's the foreigners' temple. So I think people don't think like that anymore, which is also very interesting. So many devotees have been through this temple, either for a week, a month, a year, 5 years, 10 years. Like I was saying this morning also, another point I made was standing on the shoulders of giants. That, what we have now, everything builds on itself. So all that energy, all that devotion, all that love, it's like whether it's somebody cooked one offering or somebody cooked an offering for years. It just, all that love builds. And, we cannot not mention, Mr. Bombay. Because for Srila Prabhupada, there was a Mr. Bombay. And that was our Giriraj Maharaj, His Holiness. There is only one Mr. Bombay. And he came here from the beginning, and he, every day, met businessmen, interested people, and really studied and really went deep and was very sincere in his devotion and his development of Krishna consciousness. So I had the pleasure of being here for some time when he was here, but like I said, the very early days, I was not here. And that's really when the struggle, the serious, serious struggle of devotees sleeping outside on the terrace with mosquitoes, with, every kind of disease you can imagine. And wanting to move forward and not just move forward, but please Srila Prabhupada. And every temple was opened with that in mind. I opened a temple 1971 maybe, and basically we put some cooking pots in a car, and a few of us got in the car and we drove to a city, and we drove up and down the street looking for a storefront to rent. We rented the storefront and we started going on Sankirtan. We went downtown in front of a department store and we started chanting on the street every day. We had the Sunday feast and we went to the universities to preach and sell magazines. So, that's how we did things. One or two people would just go off and build something, create something, put their energy in something and try to please Srila Prabhupada. So everything geometrically progresses and expands. So now we have quite a little army in India. So if everybody takes Krishna consciousness seriously and really puts their heart and mind to doing something, there's no limit to what we can do. Because just in this one city now, we have 4 huge temples. So if we use that capacity, that capability properly and sincerely, without being deviated by, when big things are there and money is there, we can lose our focus. And so it's good to kind of keep to the basics and to stay focused and be humble, try to cooperate together, and the sky is the limit where we can go from here. Srila Prabhupada went to see Sumati Mararji, and she lived 5 minutes down the road. She had a nice house on the beach. And she said, Swamiji, you may have a heart attack and die on that ship. It's not easy to go to America. But there was no changing his mind. And so she was a very sweet lady and very sincere and sympathetic to Srila Prabhupada's cause. And she gave him that facility to go. So each one of us has the opportunity to look in our own heart and to think, what is our dream? How can we please our Guru? How can we please our God brothers and God sisters? Because this is all family. And really, all this is a kind of factory to create love. Because the real thing is the devotion. Like a child wants to make an offering to the father or mother. Well, the child has nothing. So the child goes to the father and says, give me some, I want to buy this for mommy. So the father is giving money, the father is giving facility to offer, the child can offer something to the mother. So Krishna, he owns everything. He's the most wealthy. He's created everything. An artist we may appreciate an artist, wow, that flower you painted, wow, it's so lifelike. And he's got talent, and it took a lot of energy to do that. But who created the flower in the first place? Who's the primary artist? Who's the most wealthy? It's not Mr. Hinduja, it's not Mr. Raheja, although they're very wealthy people. Krishna, God, the Supreme, he's created everything and everyone. So it is good to contemplate so many things. Srila Prabhupada has given us this philosophy, which is materially very interesting, spiritually very interesting. It is revolutionary and transcendental. And if we try to live it to the best of our ability and we speak it to the best of our ability, then it will affect people. Srila Prabhupada wearing simple dhoti and looking very different from Westerners, somehow it ignited like a fire, like these fires that are going on in California and causing destruction. This is a transcendental fire which burns up Maya and, creates love in the heart in the proper way. So, this is the real essence. Not to be busy just to be busy, not to be materially successful, but to pay attention to the heart, to pay attention to the love, to the family, to the brothers and sisters, and who are we working for, and to keep that focus. This is my experience. I am not particularly advanced or a good devotee, but humility and integrity goes a long way. So we can all learn from each other. Like Chanakya Pandit says, take gold even from a dirty place. You can learn from anyone. You can learn from a bird. If you pay attention to things that happen in life, you can learn from that, let alone from each other. So there must be many people that would like to speak something. I don't know if this has been helpful. I didn't really talk that much about pastimes. I could tell a story that I probably told before, but Srila Prabhupada came to Washington, D.C. in America. So Washington, D.C. is the capital of the United States. And I had been living in Detroit. This is before I came to India. And so I was quite a respected cook, well-known cook. And I came to actually cook for Srila Prabhupada in Washington. So when I arrived there, I saw they were getting milk directly from the farm. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'll try to make rasgulla for Srila Prabhupada, because the best milk is cow milk that's not been boiled. Not milk from the store that's pasteurized and homogenized, but actually milk directly from the cow. And then the devotee said, no, you can't use this milk to make rasgulla. It doesn't work. I said, okay, I'll just try my best. Every milk is different, so I thought I'll try. So Srila Prabhupada was coming to Washington, and I prepared rasgulla to the best of my ability. And a little bit of the backstory is the second time I went to Calcutta, I went into 3 sweet shops. I made friends with the cooks, and I would watch them prepare their sweets to learn how they did it. So I was trying to utilize what I learned to make the rasgulla for Srila Prabhupada. So I made the rasgulla, I made a fruit plate. The devotees went to the airport to greet Srila Prabhupada, and I sent the fruit plate and the rasgulla. I didn't go to the airport. No, I'm mixing 2 stories. I apologize. When Srila Prabhupada came and arrived, I brought the fruit and the rasgulla into the room where he was with the GBC sannyasis and important personalities. So Srila Prabhupada had a piece of fruit and he handed it to Kirtananda. He said, now you distribute. Then Prabhupada started passing out the rasgulla, giving this devotee, and I had worked hard to make the rasgulla. And I thought, well, I want Srila Prabhupada to have a rasgulla. And so I was a little worried that all my service, of course I shouldn't be attached, but still. So I said, Srila Prabhupada, you're not going to give away all the rasgulla, are you, and not have any left for you? He said, I'm not such a fool. Of course, this is not an exact quote, but basically he was saying, I'm not such a fool that I'll give away all the rasgulla. So there was enough he gave away, and then he kept one for himself. And then he said, oh, this rasgulla is very good. So then I said, but Srila Prabhupada is not as good as Kesi Das, is it? So Kesi Das is a very famous sweet shop in Calcutta, which Srila Prabhupada would sometimes refer to in a lecture. And Srila Prabhupada had just come from New Vrindavan before he came to Washington, D.C. So he said, but in New Vrindavan, they're making better than K.C. Das. Because they have their own cows and milk, and I think it was Kaladri that was making the rasgulla. I'm not sure. It could be Ambarish or somebody else. But Srila Prabhupada said, they are making better than K.C. Das. So Srila Prabhupada, he was a saint. You cannot glorify him enough spiritually. He was also an expert businessman, an expert manager. He was personal with everyone. He was just expert in anything and everything. It's one thing to be saintly, but you're not a good manager. But he was just indescribable. And we, Malechas, fell in love with him. It's basically the fact. Krishna, to us, Krishna's far away, but Prabhupada was right there. And we could see him and his qualities. And we respected those qualities and come to love him and those qualities. And we just wanted to do anything we could to be of some assistance to help him on his mission. And this is part of the fruit, and many of those very advanced and wonderful devotees are the fruit. The books they've written are the fruit. And we can also be part of the fruit. That's the plan. So thank you very much for listening to my few thoughts. Is that okay? Does anybody have questions on anything? I don't know. I don't know if I'm expert to be able to speak on any topic, but I cooked also another time. Before this, I cooked for Srila because I was a cook. Then I became a pujari. But I cooked in Detroit, so I was mixing two stories a little bit. Srila Prabhupada was in Detroit. It's hard to remember the date. 1973. 1973, Srila Prabhupada came to Detroit, and the temple was on West Jefferson. So it was a beautiful big house on the edge of a bad neighborhood. And Kirtananda had come from New Vrindavan, and he had brought some paneer with him from New Vrindavan, from their glorious cows. So I was a cook, but I wasn't the most experienced cook, but I learned from that Indian gentleman who was like a brilliant professional pakka cook. Because in India, the ladies are always the cooks, because in the house they cook, and Indian ladies are fabulous in the kitchen. But when it comes to festivals and big cooking, it's always the men with the giant karais and cooking in huge quantities. So this Indian gentleman was really like a professional cook. He knew everything. And one day I said to him, "What is this, gulab jamun? Oh, you want to make gulab jamun? Bring me this, bring me this, bring me this." 30 minutes later, it's offered. And he really knew what he was doing. So Kirtananda came with the paneer, and I said, "Well, what should I do with this? Should I just cut it up and put it on a fruit plate?" He said, "No, make sandesh." So I had heard about sandesh, but I never really made sandesh. So I said, "How do you do it?" He said, "Well, you knead the cheese, and you put a little sugar, and you heat it up, and you roll it into balls." So I thought, okay, I can knead the cheese and put a little sugar and roll it up, heat it and roll it into balls. Actually, when I was in Calcutta and I saw how they did it a little bit different. Still basically that, but, there's certain refinements that they make, because they really make good sweets in Calcutta. But, so I did that. And the devotees went to the airport to greet Srila Prabhupada with a fruit plate and with the sandesh that I had made. And when the devotees came back, they told me, "Oh, Prabhupada loved the sandesh. He wants to have sandesh twice a day while he's here." And that's when we understood that sandesh, rasgulla, these are Bengali sweets. Srila Prabhupada's from Bengal. In the West, what do you know about this? It's a kind of culture that you don't know, but we don't know. So slowly we understood. So I had the pleasure of, besides cooking for all the devotees that were there, I was also cooking sweets for Srila Prabhupada. Kirtananda was cooking for Prabhupada because his nickname was Kitchen Ananda, and Srila Prabhupada taught him personally how to cook. So one day there was initiations, and myself and a few other devotees, we made a big feast for the deities. And I had the pleasure of taking the Mahaprasad into where Prabhupada was staying. He was staying outside of the temple because the temple was too small. And so it was at somebody's house, and so I went with some devotees, and we went there, and I put the prasad in front of Srila Prabhupada. Again, it was the sannyasis, GBC. It wasn't everybody. So I put the plate in front of Srila Prabhupada. Again, he started distributing. He took a little something. He first took a green pepper pakora, capsicum pakora. And then he handed something to Kirtananda. He said, "You distribute." So he tried a few more things, and then he didn't take sandesh. So I said, me boldly, I said, "Srila Prabhupada, there's sandesh on the plate." "Where?" "Oh, the white balls." "Oh." So he picked it up, ate half, handed it to me. In an instant. You know, cooks always miss everything. Cooks are always in the kitchen. Srila Prabhupada would come and give initiation and give a lecture. Cooks in the kitchen. So many things are going on. Cooks in the kitchen. Big festivals, you know, huge cooking. Cooks are in the kitchen. So I did get some nectar. On that same trip, at a certain point, Kirtananda said to me, "Oh, I have to go back to New Vrindavan. It's too bad you're so busy cooking for all the devotees that you won't be able to cook for Srila Prabhupada." I said, "I'll cook for Srila Prabhupada. I'll talk to my in charge, who was Bhagavan at the time." So I said, "You got to arrange somebody else to cook lunch for all the devotees so I can cook for Srila Prabhupada." So he did. So I cooked for Srila Prabhupada on Ekadashi. And I was, of course, very nervous. So I prepared, I fried Karela, I made different things. I made things that they made in Buffalo, because I became a devotee in Buffalo. That's the city I'm from. And they used to make a kind of potato with toasted coconut, not really traditional Indian things, a little different. But that's kind of where I grew up in Krishna Consciousness, although I moved into the temple in Detroit. And this was in Detroit where I was cooking. So I made those things and finished everything. And so I said to a servant, who was Aravinda at the time, and I said, you can take the plate into Srila Prabhupada. He said, "I'm not taking the plate in. I didn't cook it. You cooked it. You take it in." I said, "Really, me?" So I carried the tray in. Srila Prabhupada was chanting his Gayatri. It was like he was in Goloka Vrindavan. It was like he didn't look like he was on this planet. Although he was there in front of me, he was like somewhere else. I couldn't even look at him hardly because it was just too moving, too intimate almost. I put the tray down. And then after a few minutes, Srila Prabhupada finished, and he looked and he said, "Oh, halava?" So the only halava at the time I was really familiar with was suji halava. Means our ISKCON halava, made with semolina, which is a grain. So I said, "No, Srila Prabhupada, it's potatoes." And I thought, oh no, you know he's not going to like it. He thinks it's halava. I'm in the soup. So I said, "No, Srila Prabhupada, it's potatoes." And then I left to heat his milk, because that's generally what he would take after a short while. And then when I came back in with the hot milk for Srila Prabhupada, he said, "You're a very good cook," which stunned me, and I didn't know what to say. I just said, "Srila Prabhupada, please come again back to Detroit again soon so I could have another opportunity to serve you." So another day I also went, and I was cooking, I was doing something, I was making fruit ready, I was preparing food, prasad for Prabhupada to take on the airplane. So again, he was sitting at the airport. When we all went to the airport, I was in a separate car, and he's sitting with all the devotees and, intimate discussion and just seeing Prabhupada. And of course, I have done all this work, and now I have to arrange to give it to a servant. So in those days, you could just walk on the airplane. Like, I wasn't flying, but I actually went onto the airplane and gave it to Srila Prabhupada's servant, who kept it with him. And then I walked off the plane, and I was in the tunnel between the plane and the airport. So all the devotees are on the far side, all like, right? Everybody's looking. And Srila Prabhupada just enters the tunnel, and I'm on the other side coming. So in the middle, we meet. So of course I fall to the floor, I offer my obeisances. Srila Prabhupada looks down and pats me on the head. And then all the devotees are kind of squealing and just, he's so lucky. So even though being a cook, I miss so many things, still somehow Krishna reciprocates. So I had some personal interaction, although there were certain devotees that, of course, had so much interaction with Srila Prabhupada. The leaders, the temple presidents, sannyasis, Giriraj Maharaj, His Holiness, had so much interaction with Srila Prabhupada. So many questions, so many letters, so many personal discussions. And has really gone deep into that very, very seriously, and has written, of course, books. He's writing the history of Hare Krishna land and many other things. So it's, I wish he could be in two places at once, but it's not easy to do that in this world. So someday we'll be blessed that he will be back with us, and we can take more of his association, because really Hare Krishna land was built on his shoulders and his desire to please Srila Prabhupada. And of course there's others. Sridhar Swami was also here, very serious, very dedicated for so many years. And then even the regular devotees, because there is no little devotee. I mean, if you're doing according to your capacity, that's a big devotee. Like the story of Garuda, right? Garuda is emptying the ocean, and then there's a little, was it a little bird? What was it? That was also trying to help a little bit and had just a little beak, but was also working as hard as Garuda, because that was the capacity. So, it's a matter of inspiration, it's a matter of dedication, it's a matter of just making a decision that I choose Krishna. Because at every moment we have that choice. So all you have to do is choose Krishna. It's easy to say, all you have to do is just choose Krishna. But basically it's as simple as that, because like Prabhupada said, Maya's not holding on to us. We're holding on to Maya. So if we just let go, Prabhupada said you could be Krishna conscious in 1 second. But if we are complicated, then it's not so easy. It may take a lot longer. But any service we do, nothing is lost. So today is, even today, I can tell you a little story of Vrindavan on Srila Prabhupada's disappearance day, because I was in India to be head pujari at Bombay. And of course, we were still getting ready for that. And I had gone to Vrindavan. I had been in Jaipur a little bit. I'd gone to Vrindavan, especially when Srila Prabhupada was sick. I went to Vrindavan. I went to his room every day to chant. Devotees would come and peacefully, quietly chant. And so at some point, some devotees were saying, oh, you're supposed to be the head pujari of Bombay. What you're doing here, why? You should be doing work, service. You should be getting ready for Bombay. And so at some point I started feeling a little guilty that maybe I shouldn't be in Vrindavan. Maybe I should go do service. Maybe I should be, go to Jaipur. We were making paraphernalia there. So I left for Delhi, and I was in Delhi, and then I was going to Jaipur, but somehow I met Gopal Krishna Maharaj at some place in Delhi, and then he gave me the message that the Kaviraj said that Srila Prabhupada only has a very limited time, only some hours, and that it's better to go back to Vrindavan. So then I hoped to get a ride in his vehicle, but that wasn't possible, so I went to take the train. In those days, nobody really had money. I mean, like 50 rupees was like a lot of money. It's not like people were given petty cash to, so I don't know how much money I had with me, but not very much. So I went to the train station and I took the train to Mathura instead of going to Jaipur. And then I was from the train station, I went to the bus station to try to get the bus to go to Vrindavan. And for some reason, the bus didn't come. There was no bus. It was delayed. And I met another devotee there, Riksharaj. Srila Prabhupada disciple, of course. And we were discussing, what do we do? Do we try to take a taxi? Do we wait for the bus? Finally, the bus came. We got on the bus. We landed in Vrindavan. We arrived. We were walking. I guess we were on a rickshaw. We got on a cycle rickshaw from the bus stand. And we came through Loy Bazaar. And then a few shopkeepers were saying something, Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada. We couldn't really understand what they were saying. But we arrived in front of the temple. And I had been in Vrindavan for weeks, and then I went to do service, and then I got this information, so I immediately tried my best to get back to Vrindavan. So we arrived in front of the temple, and we're walking inside, and we heard a kirtan, and we saw there was some kind of parikram. So in those days, because Prabhupada's health wasn't good, Prabhupada would be on the palanquin, and the devotees would carry him. So we didn't know if Prabhupada was just being carried by devotees or if Srila Prabhupada had passed away. So it was a very odd mood and feeling to as we entered the temple. Of course, in a second we can understand also that Srila Prabhupada had passed away. It was about maybe a half an hour after he passed away, and they were just first bringing him to the temple room. And so it was a very sad, very perplexing time. So Srila Prabhupada was placed on the Vyasasana, and then Omkar was the head pujari of Vrindavan then, and I decorated Srila Prabhupada with flowers, and then there was kirtan all night, bhajan kirtan in the temple room. Srila Narayan Maharaj came, other sadhus came, and just devotees. We were just up all night having kirtan. And then Mangal Artik, of course, you can imagine the mood was just, people were just speechless. So then we had to have a feast because there's puja to be done. There's so many things to be done. So, Govinda Maharaj, Ayodhyapati. Now he's Govinda Maharaj. So he asked me, Narotam, would you help me cook? We need to cook a beautiful feast for Srila Prabhupada. And I said, I don't want to cook. I said, we always miss everything. This will never happen again. It's not like I can hear the tape. This is my only opportunity, and I just want to be there and absorb everything. But then I said, at the same time, I'm trained as a cook, and it's my responsibility as a cook to glorify my spiritual master and my guru. So how can I say I'm not going to cook? I can't say that. So I had this battle inside. But I said, of course I'll help you. So the three cooks were Ayodhyapati, or Govinda Maharaj, myself, and Riksharaj. Riksharaj was also a good cook, and he was who was with me on the bus. So the three of us cooked. I guess other people must have cut sabji and things like that, but basically it was the three of us that cooked. A wonderful feast, and I've heard that people have told me that Maharaj has talked about that time and talked about the feast and went into great detail, many more details than I can remember. But I said, so this is the plan we made, because they first took Srila Prabhupada on parikrama of all the major temples of Vrindavan. So I said, let's make a deal. We won't go on parikrama, but when Srila Prabhupada comes back to Krishna Balaram temple, and they're going to do the puja to put him in samadhi, that whatever position we're in, we stop and we attend. So that was what we decided, and that's basically what we did. So we cooked. It was a beautiful feast, and then when Srila Prabhupada came back, of course we went. And I'm not the tallest person, and it was very hard to see much because I'm not the kind of person that's going to push my way to the front. But it was very special time. But again, as Srila Prabhupada's son and disciple, servant, and it's time to glorify him through cooking, then how can I say no? Of course I have to say yes. So with full enthusiasm, we cooked a grand feast. And it was a glorious day. As this is the anniversary of that day, and devotees all over the world are remembering and glorifying and appreciating and sharing with each other. This is going on, in so many cities, and when you go to Vrindavan and you see the Radha Damodar temple and you see the room where Prabhupada lived, the simplicity in which he lived as a sadhu in Vrindavan, he was completely satisfied. Surrounded by cartels and Radhe Radhe and, Radharaman and all the glorious temples and deities, Prabhupada writing and meeting people during the day. But he left all that peace of Vrindavan, that golden heart of Radharani. He left that to go to this crazy place called America. It's just, why? To help people like me. Fallen people and because Prabhupada was feeling the pain of the world. He was feeling people suffering. And he thought, if I can do any good, if I can somehow alleviate even one person's suffering, I'm going. So it's just like, how do you glorify a personality like that? If you talk for weeks, there's not enough words to really bring that out. I think you take all the devotees and combine it together, then you maybe touch a little bit. Srila Prabhupada had heart attacks on that ship. It was not a luxury liner. There was no swimming pool. There was no spa. It was very simple. But Prabhupada's, he was so happy in Vrindavan, looking at the samadhi, getting inspiration, preparing himself, maturing himself to go to the West, the greatest country of the world, America, and introduce something which is the opposite of what they're living. Oh, you should do like this, you should do like that. What? But because of the potency of the pure devotee, right? There's some shloka that says a moment's association with a pure devotee opens the path of liberation and transcendence. One of my favorite things to do when I first met the devotees, because some people really, picked up from a previous lifetime and like, say, somebody like Indradumna Maharaj. He joined in Ann Arbor. He met Vishnu Jan Maharaj in Ann Arbor. And then he came to the Detroit temple. So I've known him since the day he walked in the door. And he, from the first day, he loved kirtan. He loved everything. I mean, that's really from a previous life. I did not come quite so easily as that. I had so many questions, and why this and why that, and my mind was a little bit more complicated. He was just, from the day one, loved it all. And we used to do festivals in Detroit. We would go to colleges. We would put on transcendental festivals, which is where he learned to do that, where he first saw that, and he was involved with it. And now he's developed it much more. And it's a really powerful way to share Krishna consciousness with people through culture, through kirtan, through philosophy, through color, through dance. It's amazing. And he takes it to Poland every year. So, like I said in the beginning, there is a beginning. Each of us begins in some way. Either at the time of our birth, we start learning how to walk, how to talk. Slowly, we understand what is this world. We learn a language. You have to have a system, otherwise how you communicate. So we learn a language, then we can communicate with each other. If we're blessed, we have the opportunity to meet a sadhu, a holy person, who introduces us to possibilities that we couldn't have imagined. Like a small kid, he's watching television, and he's thinking, how did those people get inside that box? What's going on there? But actually, we know there's not little people in the box. It's electrical energy that's being sent, and we're watching an image that's being projected. So this material world is also a kind of projection of, we think we're watching reality. Like you're going to the movie, and you're laughing, you're crying, according to what's on the screen. But the reality of the movie is it's a piece of plastic film that's being projected on a screen. There's no reality there. So this machine that we are so attached to, that we think, this is, as devotees, we understand this is not us, at least intellectually. But to deeply realize that completely, that's not a small thing. But that's why Srila Prabhupada, every lecture, you're not that body, you're not that body, you're not that body. Because how to break through all those subtle... So the spiritual world is the eternal world. This material world is the temporary world. This is illusionary. So we may laugh, we may cry, but this is not lasting. What is more important is that spiritual life. So we also have to live in this life. We need balance. So we have grihasta life. We have so many things in this Varnashram system. But we cannot neglect the spiritual side. Otherwise, like Prabhupada said, in America, it's so many zeros. Big numbers. 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. But if you put a 1 in front, then you really have something. So he wanted to take Indian culture, the wealth of India, the deep spiritual culture, and merge it, make it, combine it with Western efficiency, Western things. So Prabhupada was not hesitant to use cars and all kinds of technology or modern methods of spreading Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada also, he would always say what you didn't expect him to say. Like, I have a friend who was temple president, and he was very, very personal. And often the temple president is not that personal because, he's got a big position, he's got a lot of responsibilities, and, to really pay attention to each devotee like a family member is not always easy. but his nature was very personable. So he was really cared about every devotee, male, female, very, very thoughtful person. And he was going through a period in his life where he wasn't chanting. So the GBC came to know, and they thought, he's a temple president, that means he's like the spiritual authority. He's not chanting. I mean, obviously he's not qualified. He can't, this is not correct. We should, put somebody else. So that GBC went to Srila Prabhupada, and he said, Mr. such and such a Das, he's not chanting his rounds. So my suggestion is that, we put somebody else, we change. So most of us would think naturally, I mean, you have, if we would agree, probably, most people. Srila Prabhupada, what did he say? He said, at least he says he's not chanting his rounds. How do I know you're chanting your rounds? He didn't want to change. He wanted that devotee. He saw something in that person and he thought, no, he's good. He should do this. So, I mean, Srila Prabhupada, he never said what you thought he would say. And each of us, it's not a competition to be better than the other guy or the other woman. I'm going to be a better devotee than him, and my tilak's going to be straighter than his, and I'm going to sell more books. It's not a competition. If there is a competition, it's with ourselves, to somehow be better than we were yesterday, to try to pay more attention, to be a little more sincere, to try to pay a little more attention when we chant. So it's not a race. Krishna consciousness is not a race. And, we work together because we're a family. It's like when you see the birds all flying in the sky. They're in a group. They're all flying together. But each bird has to flap their own wings. Nobody can flap your wings for you. You have to decide, I want to flap my wings. When those birds are migrating, it's not like you can just hold on to somebody else. Like in India, sometimes we see the car is going and then somebody's holding onto the car on the bicycle, and one car is going and they have another car there. The guy's got his foot, and see a lot of things. India is very practical intelligence. It's funny, but so if we can just, if nobody joins Krishna consciousness and just goes up. There's up and down and in and out and this and that and all these little battles inside. So one day you're doing good and I'm doing bad, and then you encourage me, and then next day somebody else, it's family. But try to be aware, try to be conscious, try to think about what we're doing. And when you read Srila Prabhupada's books, those books are really, we say it all the time, but it's really true. Those books are non-different from Srila Prabhupada. If Srila Prabhupada was here personally giving a lecture and you read from that book, the only difference is you would hear his voice. And the voice from a pure devotee, of course, is so potent. But his voice is there in his books. And that's one of the first things that really struck me, that when Srila Prabhupada came to Detroit for the first time and I heard some of his talking, I thought, yeah, it really is the same as his books. It's just, he's there in person. But listening to lectures of Srila Prabhupada is also very potent, because there's recordings. And you can sit and listen to the sound vibration directly from the pure devotee. And it really acts on the heart. But reading also, of course, we should all read. And I think, each disciple has a little piece of Srila Prabhupada in him. Not really a piece of Srila Prabhupada, but I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. But maybe not some little quality, like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I mean, certainly that's something we all share, that affection and love, that, sincere affection, like you love your mother, you love your father, you love your sister, you love your brother. We have to learn to love Radha and Krishna, love our God brothers and God sisters, love our Guru, love our service, love what we do. Try to, when I was head pujari here, and I would try to encourage the pujari, the cooks, the pujaris, to cook a nice offering. And I would say, is a minimum of devotion. Give me as much love as an Indian lady puts in the food when she's cooking for her family. Don't cook like a robot. There's a sabji, there's the savory, there's a sam. Everything is there. What's the problem? There's the checklist. Boom, boom. It's not about a checklist. It's about devotion. It's about putting feeling, really putting feeling into what you do. And I would also tell the pujaris, okay, we're supposed to think of Krishna 24 hours a day, right? This is a yoga process. We're supposed to control the mind and think of Krishna every minute. Well, I don't. I said, but at least when it's your time to do artik, you can try to do that. If it's your time to cook the offering, you can try to do that. For that period of time, you really try to be fully absorbed and present in what you're doing. And slowly, but if we just think, oh, I'm cooking, but we're not paying attention. We're just doing, everything's there. I made the sabji, I made this, I did, it's all there. That's not the point. Because Krishna can eat in any restaurant. He can go anywhere. He can cook his own lunch. Or Radharani is already cooking for him. But we need to do this. We want to do this. We love to do this. I mean, that's what we're trying to get to that point. Whatever your service. Anybody else would like to share the microphone? I'm sure people would like to make an offering. I think this is enough. What time is it? 9? As I said this morning, we should learn to live our life in such a way that Krishna is happy to see us. Like, of course, we always want to see Krishna, but he should, because when you're taking darshan, Krishna is also getting your darshan. He also sees us. And he is a person. Srila Prabhupada is a person. He's not a statue. He's not somebody that lived in the past. Like we hear these stories with the 6 Goswamis, and it's all in the past, and then they're actually people like us. Of course, way beyond us in their spirituality, but they're actually people with personalities, amazing personalities. And, it's not that long before Srila Prabhupada's disciples were not going to be around, because already so many are leaving. And we're going to be just names. Oh, Shyamasundar, oh, this one, oh, that one. So, what we did, we did. But we're not bigger or better than we are. We're just people. trying our bit to serve and please Prabhupada to some degree. And somehow the whole collection together, we made magic. I mean, Prabhupada made it all possible. But even though we're all basically incompetent and not particularly intelligent or capable, but somehow that inspiration that Prabhupada created in us that allowed us to, I mean, go beyond what we possibly would have done or could have done. I mean, it's quite impossible and amazing, but it happened. So it doesn't stop here. It continues. And what is the future? The future can be very glorious, amazingly glorious. So the future is up to you. Already this is your culture. So when you add on to your good qualities that you're already had, that you learned in your family, and you can do much more than us. But Prabhupada did like to show the Westerners off to the Indians, like the industrialists and things. Look what the Westerners are doing. He used it in his preaching very intelligently. This is Mr. Ford. He's a devotee. So, but the world is in dire straits. I mean, politically and, the world needs lots of help. So there's plenty of room for devotees to educate people. You can just pick a country and go there. Maharaj? When Srila Prabhupada was sick, he came through Bombay, and he was in these quarters, laying in his bed, and we would come every day and have very quiet kirtan. And then Srila Prabhupada left to go to Vrindavan. So he went by train, and of course his health was not good. So he laid in the back of his car, and we all went to the train station to send him off. And so we went to Bombay Central, and Bombay is it's a dham. Hare Krishna land is a dham. Of course, where Srila Prabhupada mostly stayed was in one of the buildings in the back where BBT was. And now we knocked it down to have space to build, heaven on earth and the temple. So unfortunately that's not there, but Juhu Beach, Prabhupada would walk on Juhu Beach. There's so many pastimes and discussions. It's not any less important than Vrindavan or Mayapur. But in a different way. Like he said, it's my office. And he knew Bombay's like the leading city of of India, that if Bombay people can take to something, they're intelligent people, cultured people, successful people, and you just see what has come of it. It's amazing. Now we have four huge temples. And people preaching it in their own homes and small programs. And so it's up to each individual. What is your capacity? What is your inspiration? And it may not come in one day. It takes time to mature. A piece of fruit, it's growing on the tree, but it's not necessarily ripe. Oh, it's a pear, it's a plum, it's a this or that, but it takes time. So, but if we have the desire to move in that direction, then we mature. So it's a good day to speak of Srila Prabhupada and his sincere disciples. And it's an opportunity for us to kind of look at ourselves and think about what's going on with us and where we want to go and what we want to do. It's kind of a pointer, so it's a way to take stock, inventory. We have festivals. It's so many devotees working together. We have the kirtan people singing so sweetly. We have the cooks. We have the preachers. We have the pujaris. I mean, all these departments, they're all part of the whole. And it's all part of the presentation and the glorification and the practicality of what it means to have an ashram and a temple. And so whatever you like to do, whatever your capacity, there's a way to engage yourself. And be part of the offering to Radharasa Bihari, who are standing there, ready to reciprocate and accept. Even in the smallest way. I mean, I love the flowers tonight, the kushbu, the aroma. I mean, such sensitivity of Srila Prabhupada's bed. And so we come and, we didn't have to think about that, but we come and it just adds to the mood, the charm of the remembering Prabhupada and being together and the kirtan. It's all part of it. And it's all important. And nothing just happens automatically. It's all time, energy, thought, depth of understanding, and sensitivity. Then you create something really beautiful. If we just work without thinking, yeah, it's something, but it's better to really pay attention and really care and try to do things with love and sensitivity and thoughtfulness and cooperation. I think enough. Hare Krishna.